So, you want to play the Barbarian. The axe-swinging, goblin-slaying, meat-slapping Barbarian. Then this is your guide. Barbarians love two things in life: killing, women, and meat. Wait, hold up. Anyways, this is your guide to the Barbarian. The Barbarian is a simple class. Simply grab a great axe, rage, run into combat, and hit something. Pros with playing a Barbarian is that you are the D12 god with hit points and damage. You have amazing melee damage, and with your rage feature, you have basically double the hit points. Cons of the Barbarian is that there isn't much class diversity. You're heavily strength based, you're quite prone to charm and fear effects, and you have very to little range. Ability scores are the basis for all characters. Here's what each one means for you. Strength is almost necessary for any Barbarian to get the reckless attack bonus and the rage damage bonus. Dexterity is useful for a Barbarian's AC. Now, Barbarians do gain advantage on dexterity saving throws and initiative rolls, so dexterity isn't quite required for those. As a side note, if you want to have your dexterity score as your primary ability score for your Barbarian, it's great for your AC, but you lose out on reckless attack and your rage damage bonus. Constitution is great for your AC and even more health. Now, on the side note of Constitution, a D12 is the best for hit points, so if you're deciding on having a bit lower Constitution, I recommend just wearing some medium armor. Intelligence is often a dump stat for many Barbarians, but it is a smart idea to move into for a cool character concept. Wisdom is really an overlooked stat for the Barbarian, as your Wisdom is used for your Wisdom saving throws, so your Barbarian doesn't get charmed or frightened in combat. Charisma, similar to Intelligence, is often a dump stat for Barbarian, but it can be welcome for certain character concepts. Scratch that, I just remember that Intimidation is a skill. You need Charisma. For races, any race that gets a bonus to its Strength and Constitution is a great choice. My personal first choice is the Half-Orc because they get an extra critical hit dice. Other notable races include the Dragonborn, Goliaths, Dwarfs, and for some small fun, a Stout Halfling. Now, if you're using any small race, remember you can't use heavy weapons. Rage. This is the entirety of the Barbarian summarized into a single ability. You gain resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage. You gain a bonus to your strength attack rolls. You also have an advantage on your strength checks and saving throws. Now, there are some downsides when it comes to Rage. First of all, it has a limited number of uses. Second, you can't cast spells nor concentrate on them. And finally, you must attack every round or take damage every round to keep your Rage going. Unarmored Defense is a great ability that allows the Barbarian to truly be that shirtless wild killer. Now, the quick downside of it is that generally medium armor will give you a higher AC, but it's your choice if you wish to wear medium armor. Reckless Attack is an amazing offensive ability. Now, simply what it does for you is that you gain advantage on all your attack rolls, but your enemies have advantage on attack rolls against you, which shouldn't bother you too much, as you likely have resistance to that type of damage, and you have so much goddamn flippin' health. Danger Sense simply gives you advantage on dexterity saving throws, never a bad thing, and always a good thing. For third level, you pick your subclass, we'll go over those later. You gain ability score improvements at level 4, 8, 12, 16, and 19. Now, I recommend that you get your strength as high as possible first. Getting extra attack to make an additional attack is always a great ability. Now, the great thing about 5th level is that we increase movement speed by 10 feet so we can get into combat even quicker. Feral Instinct gives us advantage on initiative rolls and makes it so we can no longer be surprised. This allows us to rage even faster. Brutal Critical is a nice boost to our critical damage, especially if you're using a Great Axe for some extra D12 power. It also scales quite nicely. Relentless Rage, really flippin' simple. We're literally too angry to die. With our persistent rage, we no longer need to worry about our rage ever ending. Indomitable Might is that we never fail a strength check, ever again. Ever. For a level 20 ability, we get Primal Champion. Now, Primal Champion gives us +4 to our strength and our constitution, increasing the maximum by 4 as well. This is one of the few ways to get ability score above 20, and it's also a really great way to end the Barbarian. Next up are your subclass choices. First up is the Way of the Ancestral Guardian. This is a very great subclass both thematically and when used for tanking. The first thing you get is a single target taunt. The next ability that you gain is you can reduce the damage of attack rolls using reaction. You gain access to a few divination spells. And lastly, whenever you reduce the damage of an attack roll, you can deal a small amount of damage back to that target. The next subclass is the Battle Rager. Now, I'm pretty sure y'all forgot about this one. Now, it is a bit underrated, and it also is limited to the dwarf race. You get access to the spiked armor. Now, the spiked armor is medium armor, gives you disadvantage on stealth checks, and it has an AC of 14 plus 2 of your dexterity bonus. Now, you gain some really great abilities while you wear the spiked armor. The first one that stands out is you gain an extra attack as a bonus action for 1d4 damage. You gain some temporary hit points whenever you use your reckless attack. You can dash as a bonus action, and you do a bit of extra melee damage to anyone who attacks you. Next up is the Berserker subclass. Now, I personally argue that this is one of, if not the best subclass for the Barbarian. Now, the Berserker ability is a really strategic ability because it gives you an invaluable extra attack as a bonus action at the down cost that you'll gain the exhaustion after the rage, so use it sparingly and for those big combats. Now, the next ability, which is the best ability that this subclass gets, is that you're immune to charm and fear effects, so you can rage to your heart's content. You gain a useless fear effect, and one more extra attack as reaction whenever you're hit. The Storm Herald is a really interesting subclass. You can choose between desert, sea, or tundra, and you can change the effect whenever you level up, and this gives you an aurora of a different effect. Now, desert gives you extra fire damage per round, fire resistance, the ability to light things on fire, and a weak hellish rebuke. Sea gives you a mini lightning bolt, extra lightning resistance, some fish effects, and whenever you strike someone with lightning, they can be pushed over. Lastly, tundra gives you some extra hit points, cold resistance, the ability to freeze things, and you can stop someone's movement once per round. The Totem Barbarian is what most people consider the best Barbarian subclass. Now, this subclass does have a lot of merits to it. First thing you get is some basic nature spells, and then you can choose a totem corresponding with different kind of totem effects. First one is Bear, where you gain resistance to almost all damage. You gain advantage on strength checks when you're not raging. Lastly, attacks not against you have disadvantage. The Wolf Totem allows your allies to gain advantage on their melee attacks, you can track targets better, and you can automatically knock a creature prone. With the Eagle Totem, you can dash as a bonus action. Also, opportunity attacks have disadvantage against you. You can see clearly up to a couple of miles. Lastly, you get so angry that you can fly for short periods of time. The last subclass for the Barbarian is the Zealot. You gain Divine Fury, which is a good boost to your damage, and it's also free for someone to revive you. You can reroll a saving throw. You can give all your allies advantage on attack rolls and saving throws, which is one hell of a good buff. Finally, you never die when you rage. Now we're going over some feats for all of y'all's feat fetishes. The first one is Great Weapon Master for a nice boost to our damage. Tough for some extra hit points. Inspiring Leader for a great party buff along for yourself. Lucky is always a great feat. Polar Master for an extra attack as a bonus action. Resilient Wisdom for some extra saving throws. And Sentinel for a good tanking feat and likely an extra attack. So, when playing the Barbarian, I find it best to really lean into the archetype. The class works really well when you have the shirtless, wild killer who charges headfirst into combat with his great axe and simply slaps some meat. How you play the Barbarian in combat really stays the same. So to make your mindless killer different than the other mindless killers out there, it really comes down to your subclass and background choices. Of course, there's the uncivilized barbarian who is raised by wolves or a wandering tribe who fights with reckless abandon and travels with the party to complete some foretold fable or quest. Now, here's an idea for the zealot barbarian. So we have an undying warrior who has died thousands of times in battle, but can never rest in peace, as the church always resurrects him when there's ever a need for a holy conquest. And finally, the zealot has had enough, and he abandons the church in search of living a true life. There are many different ways to flavor your barbarian, but the basics of having a good barbarian is to always lean towards that strong wild killer aspect. My next video will show how to make an effective barbarian by using my favorite race and a subclass you've probably forgotten about, the Battle Rager. Ladies and gentlemen, I am your host, Jay the Great, and I'm going to be signing out.